What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Powwow on a Friday and another crazy weekend. We're expecting stormy weather up here from what remains of subtropical storm or post-tropical storm beta. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about, and when we run out of the news, we will open the phone lines for your comments, questions, and observations. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. And I imagine our first story is what everybody's going to be talking about when they call on in. The grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case finally handed down some indictments, and they're not very satisfying to a lot of people. Former Officer Brett Hankison was indicted on 3 counts of wanton endangerment. Each count can carry a prison term of up to 5 years. And the reason he was indicted was that when he fired his weapon inside Breonna Taylor's apartment, the bullets went through the wall into the adjoining apartment, which was occupied at the time. Now, nobody got hit, but they still felt they were going to indict him on 3 counts of wanton endangerment. Nobody was charged related to the death of Breonna Taylor herself because the shooting was considered justified on the basis that Breonna Taylor's new boyfriend, Walker, fired the first shot, hitting an officer in the thigh. And that basically said under Kentucky law, it was justified and they can't bring any other charges against the officers. Now, this has not gone over very well with the community, and there are protests going on which have been mostly peaceful, although we're hearing now that there's been some clashes between protesters and police. And Louisville has been under a state of emergency for a couple of days now. Riot and arson threats are being made all over social media. LiveLeak posted a video showing shields and weapons being handed out to protesters in Louisville from the back of a U-Haul truck. And it makes it very obvious that somebody somewhere is organizing and paying for violence. And I think as we get closer to sunset, we may in fact see some ugliness there and possibly other cities as well. But that's basically where we are right now. One officer indicted for wanton endangerment because he endangered people in the adjoining apartments, but no indictments, no charges whatsoever related to the death of Breonna Taylor herself. All right, getting on over to the furor over the Supreme Court nomination. Donald Trump says he'll announce his Supreme Court pick at 5 p.m. this coming Saturday. That'll be Eastern time. And, speculation is still out there who it's going to be. And apparently Barbara Lagoa is still in the running because she has name value going back to the Elian Gonzalez case. She took it a pro bono case against the Clinton administration, and she represented a relative of the 5-year-old boy, Elian Gonzalez, whose mother had drowned trying to cross over from Cuba. Now, federal agents would eventually seize Elian and return him to his father in Cuba, which set off this political shockwaves that arguably may have cost former Vice President Al Gore the 2000 presidential election when he lost in Florida. If he lost in Florida, and we'll never really know what happened there. Now, GOP Senator Murkowski is already backtracking from saying that she won't support the confirmation of Donald Trump's nominee. Now she's hemming and hawing and saying, well, it depends on the nominee. But this hardline position of I'm not going to vote apparently is no longer operational, as it will. Have you noticed something very strange about Joe Biden? Well, there's a lot of strange things about Joe Biden, but this is the one I'm talking about, where he's out there declaring that the people should have a voice in choosing who's going to be on the Supreme Court by voting for him in November and letting him fill Ginsburg's seat. And yet Joe Biden won't release his list of potential nominees to the Supreme Court. Little bit of a double standard going on there. Now, apparently, they put forth a Senate resolution honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And apparently, at the last second, Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer attempted to add an amendment that included her so-called dying wish that the next president fill her seat. And again, there is some doubt whether Ginsburg actually said that or if it wasn't simply manufactured as to trying to bring more public pressure against Donald Trump regarding the Supreme Court, because by the letter of the law and by the letter of the Constitution, Trump is right. He has the authority to nominate a new justice to the Supreme Court. The Senate will advise and consent, and that's it. And they can do that literally right up to the last day of their administration, which is still 100 some odd days away. So there's no legal path for the Democrats to prevent this from happening. They may try and filibuster it all, but can you imagine a 100-day filibuster? I think that'd be pretty amazing here. All righty, pardon me. The latest Hill-Harris poll has Trump at 48% approval and 25% approval with black voters. So the numbers are really good. It's now being reported that he and Biden are now statistically neck and neck in several of the key battleground states. So Trump is gaining and Biden is slipping, and it doesn't help that apparently he called a lid on his campaign again after exhausting himself yesterday. So Trump and Biden are now battling over who is more pro-Israel, with Adelson and Saban squaring off against each other. Trump keeps trying to inject Israel into the presidential race, but indications are that he's not making a big impact on voters. Polling shows that his many actions in support of Israel have moved Jewish support to 30% from his 25% support in the 2016 election. But Biden still wins 67%, which is pretty close to the usual Democratic mark. And I'm beginning to think that most voters who are not part of the Jewish community are probably getting a little tired of Israel as part of all the campaign speeches. I know I am here. So in a campaign ad aimed at pro-Israel voters, including evangelicals, Trump trumpeted the peace deals he cut at the White House last week, saying that they were the first deals in decades. And Trump repeatedly mentioned Israel during his Rosh Hashanah call last week to Jewish leaders. We really appreciate you. We love your country also, according to the Jewish Times. All righty, Michael Bloomberg is in the news again. He's throwing his money around. He's committed, hundreds of millions of dollars to win Florida for Biden, and he may have overstepped his the little red line there, because billionaire Bloomberg has paid off $20 million in debt for more than 31,000 felons in Florida so that they can vote in the state where just 537 votes decided the presidential election in 2000. So Bloomberg stepped up. When you are a felon and you're released from prison, you don't get your voting rights back until you have made restitution to the state or to the victims or whoever the courts say that you owe restitution to. And Bloomberg stepped in and paid all those bills for 31,000 ex-felons here. All righty? So he's likely breaking the law here. The Republicans are looking at this as he's trying to buy 31,000 votes for Joe Biden. Now, nobody has said that anybody's gone to these felons and said, we're going to pay off your bill, but when you vote in November, you vote for Biden. That definitely would be vote buying. But it does look very, very suspicious. Okay, so Mike Bloomberg paid off the fines for 32,000 Black and Hispanic Florida voters so they can vote for Biden in the 2020 election. Apparently, basketball icon LeBron James is also looking to pay convicted felons fines so they can vote for Joe Biden. But they may be both breaking federal law. Now, the Democrats are panicking because this idea of buying votes in the battleground state looks really, really bad. Okay, now Matt Gaetz is calling on the Florida Attorney General to investigate Bloomberg for potentially engaging in bribery and vote buying. Okay, now Bloomberg has committed at least $100 million in Florida towards electing Joe Biden, and he's raised another $16 million actually to pay the court fines and fees of nearly 32,000 Black and Hispanic voters, presumably so that they will vote for Joe Biden. Politics is a dirty business. We need no ghosts come from the grave to tell us that here. All right, if the Democrats manage to push Joe Biden over the finish line in November's election, he will find himself presiding over a decadent, declining empire. Kind of makes you wonder if he really is crazy wanting the job. He will either continue the policies that have led the American empire to decadence and decline, or seize the moment to move our nation into a new phase, a transition to a peaceful and sustainable post-imperial future. Now, the foreign policy team Biden assembles will be key, including his choice for Secretary of Defense. And his rumored favorite is Michelle Flournoy. And that's not really a good choice. Yes, she would break the glass ceiling as the first female Secretary of Defense, but as one of the architects of our endless wars and record military budgets, she would only help steer the American empire further down its current path of lost wars, corrupt militarism, and terminal decline. All right, article that came on out from Revolver News. It's time for President Trump to restore equality and end affirmative action. Now, recently, Trump issued a directive requiring the federal government to stop employee training based on critical race theory. While this is a good measure, the president can do much more through executive action to prevent the kinds of race-based policies that are harming our economy, contributing to racial tensions, and tearing the country apart. By doing so, he can remove the incentives that ultimately lead to these kinds of trainings that exist through the private and public sectors. Now, back in 1961, President John F. Kennedy issued the first executive order to use the phrase affirmative action, requiring the federal government to take positive steps to ensure non-discrimination in hiring. Well, they didn't follow a policy of non-discrimination. They simply established quotas. They weren't providing equality of opportunity. They were mandating equality of outcome, and this led to a lot of hostility. Now, this view of civil rights was expanded in 1965 when President Lyndon Johnson signed Executive Order 11246, which mandated affirmative action for any company that did at least $10,000 in business with the federal government. Now, to show you why there is a fallacy in this equality of outcome approach, the CEO of Wells Fargo, which is America's biggest bank employer, angered their black staff during a Zoom meeting where he said the bank was struggling to reach diversity goals because there was not enough qualified minority talent. Now, you're not supposed to say that because you're being racist when you say that there isn't enough qualified talent in these various minority groups, especially with all the biases for admissions to colleges and so forth. The theory, the liberal theory, is that everybody is equally gifted. And sadly, that's not often always true, as it were. All righty, Jim Hoft from the Gateway Pundit is reporting that Nancy Pelosi broke Democrat Governor Newsom's rules and attended a Catholic mass in San Francisco during the lockdown. She even said so, that she did it herself. One of her spokesmen came on out and said, well, Pelosi misspoke. She attended the service virtually. But coming so soon after that salon video, it's even more damaging for Nancy Pelosi. And it kind of makes you wonder, how is it that she manages to keep getting elected over and over and over again? Now, House Homeland Security Committee Chair Benny G. Thompson refuses to call Acting Homeland Security Chad Wolf by his title, instead addressing him with everything from Mr. to Honorable, but not Secretary. Mr. Wolf, for his part, defied Mr. Thompson's subpoena to appear last week. Now, the Justice Department delivered a startling rebuke to another House panel this week, saying Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler's handling of a hearing with Attorney General William P. Barr over the summer was so terrible that the department won't send any more witnesses to hearings until Mr. Nadler promises better behavior. Approval of Congress is at an all-time low, and they're saying that basically Pelosi's toxicity is dribbling down through the entire establishment here. Apparently, there's been an incident with Air Force Two. Now, we all know Air Force One is the designation of whatever aircraft is carrying the president. It can be the 747 or it can be one of the smaller aircraft. That's Air Force One. Air Force Two is the plane carrying the vice president, and they never travel together for the obvious reason here. But apparently Air Force Two was carrying Mike Pence, was flying out of New Hampshire heading home, suffered a bird strike, and was forced to turn back and have an emergency landing. But Pence is okay. The birds are not doing so well, but Pence is okay here. All right, with an eye toward what's going on in Louisville, and the headline says the protest is growing. House Republicans are calling on the FBI to investigate riot funding. Well, they could ask Newt Gingrich. He seems to know where a lot of it's coming from, but Fox News, of course, shut him down. So this group of House Republicans are calling on the FBI to investigate funding behind the riots throughout the U.S., saying whoever is funding the rioting should be held accountable. In a letter to FBI Director Wray, Republicans called for justice to be given to the people and groups providing funding for the destruction of cities and towns across the country since the death of George Floyd. The letter was signed by around 24 House Republicans and calls out Antifa and argues the group's actions classify as domestic terrorism. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now, here's a case of people living in glass houses shouldn't throw stones here. Activist Alyssa Milano, an actress and a defund the police activist, called 911, triggering a massive police presence in her California neighborhood, claiming an armed gunman was on her property. It turned out to be a teenager shooting at squirrels with an air gun. But the call ignited a response that included 7 Ventura County sheriff's vehicles, a K-9 unit, a police helicopter, and 1 Los Angeles Fire Department team that sat down the street on standby. So, anyway, seems like she wants cops for herself, but not for anybody else here. Okay. DC Black Lives Matter protesters were filmed harassing a live streamer for the color of his skin. The leftist militants claim they have their own press, and they did not want white men to film them as they caused a scene in public. Now, early on, one of Black Lives Matter's agenda, stated goals, was to disrupt the nuclear family structure, or disrupt the Western family structure. They have now taken that down. The manifesto has vanished from the website ahead of the U.S. election. I guess that was not going over very well with a lot of people. So the Black Lives Matter activism group has deleted a page called What We Believe from its website, disappearing such objectives as disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure as the November 3rd election nears. The manifesto was published on Black Lives Matter's What We Believe page at least as long ago as February 2nd, but was no longer available as of last Friday. The page is now blank, except for an error message saying the page cannot be found. Now, Black Lives Matter gave no explanation for its missing manifesto, nor did it offer a comparable replacement, forcing all those curious about the movement's goals to go to an About page, which in rather general terms explains its mission to eradicate white supremacy and intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities. It does not, however, include a brief featured in the original manifesto that the nuclear family structure should be consigned to the dustbin of history. Okay, over at CNN, Don Lemon is out there saying Democrats must blow up the system and use judges to change the Constitution. Now, Chris Cuomo tried to point out to Don Lemon, judges cannot rewrite the U.S. Constitution. Democrats would need a 3/4 majority in every one of the 50 state legislatures to do so. Actually, that's not accurate. They would need a majority in 3/4 of the 50 state legislatures to put through an amendment, but Don Lemon was unperturbed. So, basically, Don Lemon has urged Joe Biden to blow up the entire system if elected. During his nightly handover exchange with Cuomo, primetime host Chris Cuomo on Monday night, the outspoken anchor said Democrats could stack the courts and use judges to abolish the electoral college system of presidential elections. His comments drew fire from Twitter conservatives. They said, you're not going to have to get rid of the Electoral College because the minority in this country get to decide who our judges are and who our president is. Is that fair? Here's a good one, a little bit of, laughter in the midst of all the angst and anxiety here. Apparently, there was this angry woman driver screaming at Trump supporters and flipping the bird at them. She was screaming blank Donald Trump and flipping off the Trump protesters when she rear-ended another car right in front of the police. So we can enjoy her little trip to the lockup here. All right, the Environmental Protection Agency is blasting Cuomo and de Blasio's response to the summer of violent protest and threatens to relocate the agency's New York City office, claiming federal workers are unsafe. They're saying, if you can't keep our employees safe, we will move. And claiming that federal workers are not safe in the city following a summer of violent protests. Okay, we're going to take a break here for some commercials, and we'll be back with more news after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. And again, a friendly nudge that Republic Broadcasting is in a permanent fundraiser. And a heartfelt thanks to those of you who've donated, because some donations are coming on in. For those of you who have not donated, I just want to ask you a question. Can you think of something that you're doing that you probably shouldn't be doing, like eating junk food or smoking, or maybe drinking a little too much here? And just imagine taking that same money, don't buy the pizza, don't buy the six-pack, don't buy the carton of cigarettes here, and send that money into Republic Broadcasting, because you'd not only be helping Republic Broadcasting, you would be helping yourself. And I think that's a win-win situation, however you look at it. So once again, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Now, during the commercial break, I'm following events over in Louisville, which is just a little ways over that way from where I am. And apparently there has been at least one altercation between protesters and the police. I saw a few people on the ground in handcuffs and one being loaded into an ambulance. The news caster was saying he thought tear gas might have been used. And right now the protesters have moved back from the police line. So as riots go, it's still pretty low key. But when you've got that U-Haul truck handing out weapons and shields, somebody somewhere is going to try and stir up some real nasty violence. And I think around sunset is when we're going to see it really start acting up, where the fires and everything start. Okay, let's talk about COVID-19 for a little bit here. The Democrats are absolutely terrified that Donald Trump is going to come up with a vaccine before the election. Now, Trump, on his part, is blaming the Democratic National Committee for politicizing the coronavirus and the vaccine itself, which they have been doing, absolutely no question. Biden, every time Biden comes out of his basement to attack Donald Trump, it's always about, oh, Donald Trump mishandled the coronavirus. I would have done such a better job. Anyway, President Donald Trump said on Sunday that the only reason the Democrats are denigrating the fact that a vaccine might be approved before the election is they fear he would get credit for it. The Democrats are desperate to find new ways of accusing Trump. This time they started to kick Trump under the bus by saying the vaccine will not work. They are doing everything in their powers to divert the undecided voters to not vote for Trump. About 3 weeks ago, they started hearing rumors that there would be a vaccine in super record time, Trump told Mark Reed Levin, a lawyer, author, and radio personality on a show he hosted. So instead of saying, wow, that's great, it's going to save a lot of lives, people are going to be protected, and this thing will end faster, instead they went on the attack, and they're still on the attack here. In fact, this article coming out of Zero Hedge may be part of that attack here. And they're saying as doubts about the FDA's credibility grow, experts are worried that the leading COVID-19 vaccines are adopting too many trial shortcuts in a rush for results. Now, this is being offset by the fact that the FDA has issued new, tougher requirements for approval of a coronavirus vaccine, a move that could obliterate the chances of a shot getting emergency use authorization before Election Day. This is coming from the Washington Post. Now, fewer than 40% of Americans plan to get a coronavirus vaccine as soon as one is available, according to a new survey. Apparently, over in Great Britain, the National Health System hospital data is revealing that in the British second wave of COVID-19, the brunt is being borne by young women between the ages of 20 and 40. A lot of people are still not exactly sure what's been going on with all of this. Article coming out of blog nomorefakenews.com, and it starts with a recent New York Times article reporting on a large study that concluded up to 90% of all U.S. COVID cases are false positives. There have been numerous reports of hospitals writing COVID on patients' death certificates with no justification whatsoever. Remember, there was a financial incentive that was being offered. Now, the CDC itself has stated that only 6% of reported COVID cases, deaths rather, are from the virus itself. The rest are with the virus. These mostly elderly people, the 94%, had prior medical conditions that were potentially lethal, all on their own. Both COVID case numbers and death numbers show evidence of fraud. And according to law, significant fraud committed during a disaster is a felony with a penalty of up to 30 years in prison. Okay, now you've probably seen the website redstate.com, and there was a writer there identified as Strife, S-T-R-E-I-F-F. It turns out that was a pseudonym for a public affairs specialist at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. And he basically used that pseudonym and that website to savage the government response to the COVID-19 pandemic, including the work of Anthony Fauci. He is now going to retire. So William Cruz told NIAID officials he will retire after the Daily Beast revealed he is also the managing editor of redstate.com. We got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and I think the phone system is working. And getting on back to the news here, we were talking about this 25-year-old Georgia man, Benjamin Jenkins, was sentenced to 40 years over child pornography. And apparently he was approaching girls as young as 13, pretending to be somebody else. He would coax the girls into providing him sexually suggestive photos of themselves. Once the girl sent a photo, Jenkins would then threaten to post the photos online or send them to friends and family if she did not send additional photos. And apparently he victimized as many as 150 girls this way. Well, I think 40 years ought to just about do it there. And of course, you know how I feel about this sort of treatment of children. And yeah, this makes me sick here. All righty, over at Microsoft's Bing mobile app, there's been a massive data leak, and it left more than 100 million records exposed online, including search queries for child pornography and shootings that could be used to blackmail users. And so this was an unsecured database belonging to Microsoft's Bing mobile app that left all these records exposed online. Amazing. You know, computers were supposed to be this servant that served us and made our lives easier, and instead it's become this horrible monster just wreaking havoc across all of our lives here. All right, the police have arrested 179 people and seized more than $6.5 million in a worldwide darknet opioid takedown. And this was all taking place in the darknet, according to the U.S. Justice Department. Okay. Now then, let's see. People are starting to wonder if gold is becoming a mainstream investment tool as the stock market goes through its roller coaster ride. And let's see, what did the Dow end up today? 525 down. That is not good. That is definitely not good. But more and more people are moving into metals. And again, if you have not put some of your investment capital into silver and gold, you really ought to. You know, and buy the dips and sell the highs and, you know, try and make some money. Over in Great Britain, there's something weird going on where apparently there have been sightings of people dressed up as 17th century physicians, you know, wearing that beak-shaped mask that doctors wore when treating people with bubonic plague. And apparently the sightings are upsetting a lot of people, as I can imagine it would. And let's see. I'm not sure this was a smart thing to do, but apparently Donald Trump asked Biden why he spent all that money on plastic surgery only to cover it up with a face mask. And it's a cheap shot. I think it's beneath Trump's dignity. Okay, we're going to take a break for station identification, and we're going to try and see what's going on with our phone line. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about COVID-19. Now, Dr. David Martin is out there with a presentation, a video that we've linked to, and it basically reveals 3 facts about the coronavirus pandemic. Fact 1, the official story is a lie. 2, the percentage of normal false positive errors in the test is higher than the percentage of confirmed positive tests from humans, which means most, if not all, of the reported human positive tests could be false. And finally, fact 3, early results from the COVID-19 vaccine trials show 60% of those injected have adverse reactions, compared to less than 8% with adverse reactions from the infection the vaccines are supposed to protect against. In other words, the treatment is far worse than the disease. And so the conclusion is a few people are set to become obscenely wealthy by causing tens of millions to become ill or neurologically injured and to die prematurely. That's why we call it the medical industrial complex. Okay, at least 1,600 people who developed coronavirus boarded planes and could have infected 11,000 more passengers, but the CDC cannot confirm any cases of in-flight spread. Something to think about. I'm thinking about that story the other day from apparently American Airlines kicked a woman off the plane. She was trying to get home because her 2-year-old was upset and wouldn't wear a face mask. And so they kicked her off the plane here. All righty, over in Manhattan, the Upper West Side, people looking to dine out in the cool fall weather while keeping a distance from others can now do so in space bubbles that protect up to 6 customers from the wind and rain. This is going to be a real problem, this lack of indoor dining, as fall and winter come on in. But apparently this bistro on the Upper West Side set up these space bubbles to beat the chilly fall weather as struggling Big Apple restaurants battle to stay open. And it has certainly been a very, very rough situation here. Okay, CDC is out there telling us how to live our lives again, and they've issued their guidelines for the coming holidays. Thanksgiving dinner is out, but according to this article, which appeared in Zero Hedge, trick-or-treating is okay. Now, the CDC's credibility took a major beating following its latest confusing shift over whether or not coronavirus was airborne. And now they've issued new guidelines urging Americans to limit Thanksgiving dinners to immediate family only. Celebrations with larger groups of relatives, if they must be held, should be held outside. For most of the country east of the Mississippi, that might be difficult in the bitter cold. The agency also cautioned that virtual gatherings are risk-free. Now, the reason I stress this whole thing about Halloween and that article is because there's another article. This one is from WCBS, where the CDC guidelines urge families to avoid trick-or-treating this Halloween. CDC says many traditional Halloween activities can be high risk for spreading viruses, including COVID-19. And we were hearing on our local Indiana radio that they're advising against trick-or-treating or haunted houses or any of that normal Halloween stuff, which is a bummer because I worked really hard on my Halloween costume this year. All righty. We're going to go ahead and open the phone lines, 800-313-9443. Now, Mayor Bill de Blasio has refused to say how many teachers he's managed to hire out of the 4,500 needed to reopen classrooms next week after the first day of remote classes was plagued by technical difficulties. All righty. Here's another little scandal coming from the Pentagon. Back in March, Congress gave the Pentagon $1 billion to combat coronavirus and build up the country's medical supplies. But instead, the Pentagon diverted most of that money to defense contractors to make things like jet engine parts, body armor, uniforms, and other military equipment. The money was part of the CARES Act, a $2.2 trillion coronavirus relief bill. It was allocated to the Pentagon under the Defense Production Act, which allows the president to direct companies to manufacture certain products. Funds were given to the Pentagon to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. The Washington Post reported that shortly after the stimulus was passed, the Pentagon began funneling hundreds of millions of dollars to defense contractors. Okay, turning to the international news now. A huge explosion has hit South Lebanon, apparently centered on a Hezbollah arms depot. And it was a powerful blast. It caused temporary panic after it was heard and felt from miles away yesterday. Images and video of the explosion spread across social media, with initial conflicting reports saying it was either the result of an Israeli attack or a gas station that went up in flames. And I've seen more than a few reports that it was, in fact, an accidental fire here. All right, Iran is out there saying that the Houthis in Yemen are using Iran's military know-how in the battle against Saudi Arabia. Iran has supplied the Houthis with technical expertise and know-how, a spokesman for the Iranian Armed Forces Brigadier General Adolfazi Shakarchi said on September 22nd. However, the general claimed that Yemeni forces have learned how to produce missiles, drones, and weapons in Yemen on their own, and Iran has no military presence in the region. Shakarchi described what Iran is doing across the region as spiritual and advisory presence, which of course is not what you hear from our corporate media. Let's see. Sakarchi went on to say, countries of the resistance front have armies and forces themselves. We provide them with advisory help in order to share our experience with the people of Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen. Our skilled forces go there and assist them, but this is the people and armies of these countries who stand against the enemies in practice. Okay, recently China put out this video simulating a missile attack, supposedly aimed at Guam. And apparently very sharp-eyed people realized that the video was a fake because some of the clips came from movies like Transformers and The Hurt Locker. I'm very surprised China would do something that clumsy. Or maybe somebody did it to get us all being afraid of China and they were being clumsy. I don't know. Anyway, over in North Korea, a vehicle that may be carrying a ballistic missile has been spotted at a parade training ground in North Korea. Amid signs it is preparing a big military display for an October 10th holiday. Commercial satellite imagery taken yesterday showed a probable missile-related vehicle at the Mirim Parade training ground outside the capital, Pyongyang, according to a report by the group 38 North, which monitors North Korea. While imagery resolution is insufficient to determine exactly what the vehicle is, relative size and shape suggests it may be a transporter, erector, launcher for a large missile. All right, turning to the economic news now. Apparently, China is putting the brakes on the TikTok deal. And what is perhaps the most compelling sign yet that Beijing has put the kibosh on the Oracle TikTok deal. The Global Times reported on Tuesday a scathing editorial attacking President Trump for attempting a robbery of TikTok and violating China's dignity. The paper's editorial writers echoed claims made in an editorial published more than 6 weeks ago by the People's Daily that Beijing would never tolerate Trump transferring majority ownership of TikTok to the U.S. Furthermore, as Kyle Bass explained earlier, anything that would require the company to fork over its content recommendation algorithm is an instant deal breaker. Beijing has previously said it would rather shut down TikTok US than hand the business to Americans. So it looks like that deal is in trouble here. Actually, we're still in the international news here. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper vowed yesterday that the U.S. will help maintain Israel's qualitative military edge, or QME. The QME is mandated by U.S. law and means the U.S. will uphold Israel's military superiority over its neighbors. Esper made these comments as he welcomed Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz to the Pentagon. A cornerstone of our defense relationship is preserving Israel's qualitative military edge in the region, Esper said. The United States is committed to that, and the Department of Defense is committed to that imperative. Now, Gantz traveled to Washington to meet with Esper and other U.S. officials to discuss Israel's QME amidst rumors of a U.S. F-35 sale to the United Arab Emirates. A report from Reuters published yesterday said that the U.S. is looking to agree to an initial deal by December. Okay. Now we're talking about the economic news here. Bed Bath & Beyond reveals which 63 stores will close by the end of 2020 after announcing plans to shutter 200 locations and slash 2,800 jobs over the next 2 years. And that's part of their cost-cutting strategy. The news comes 2 months after the New Jersey-based home goods retailer announced plans to shutter 200 Bed Bath & Beyond stores. We had one on Oahu. I thought it was really cool. But, you know, it's the kind of houseware stuff that's usually the first thing you stop buying when money gets tight here. So stores in 29 states are on the chopping block, with California and New York set to lose the most retailers at 6 locations each. Now, this is kind of a surprising story, but we're going to get it out there in case you're one of these people. But apparently, nearly 9 million eligible Americans have yet to receive their $1,200 stimulus check, and they have until October 15th to submit their information to the IRS before losing out on the funds. According to a report released Monday by the Government Accountability Office, 8.7 million Americans have yet to file for the check 7 months after the CARES Act made the money available. The Government Accountability Office, which is a nonpartisan congressional watchdog, known as the investigative arm of Congress, estimates that many of those yet to receive the money are low income. Most are in need of financial support. And this has to do with what is called the non-filer status, because the IRS built its list of people getting the stimulus checks on the basis of those who file income tax returns. And if you go to their website, there was actually a little link. Say, if you are a non-filer and you want to register for your stimulus payment, you can click this link. A lot of people are maybe so afraid of the IRS, they don't want to even do that. Okay, a lot of criticism is starting to be focused on Tesla and Elon Musk. Apparently, his new Tesla battery that he's been touting is not going to be ready for about 3 years. He's still promising a $25,000 fully autonomously driving Tesla. Experts aren't sure he's going to be able to come up with that. So I'm looking at this article out of Investment Watch blog, and it's saying if Elon Musk's Tesla looks, feels, and trades like a Ponzi scheme, it probably is. And it calls Tesla a profitless mania. Tesla mania. There it is. All right, let's talk a little bit about Julian Assange. His trial at the Old Bailey, or his extradition hearing at the Old Bailey, is continuing. And alt-right media personality Cassandra Fairbanks' witness testimony was read out in court, providing evidence that Julian Assange's April 2019 arrest at the Ecuadorian embassy in London was politically motivated and directed by United States President Donald Trump. Fairbanks testified that Arthur Schwartz, a wealthy Republican Party donor and key Trump ally, had told her that Assange was taken from the Ecuadorian embassy on orders from the president. The conversation between Schwartz and Fairbanks occurred in September 2019 and was recorded by Fairbanks. Schwartz, a frequent visitor to the White House and informal advisor or fixer to Donald Trump, told Fairbanks the president's orders were conveyed via U.S. Ambassador to Germany Richard Grenell, who brokered a deal with the Ecuadorian government for Assange's removal. Grenell is currently Director of National Intelligence, appointed by Trump in February of this year. All right, D.C. public schools are spending $30,000 per student. Only 23% of 8th graders are proficient in reading. You want to talk about the dumbing down of America? That is absolutely shameful. The public elementary and secondary schools in the District of Columbia spent $30,115 per pupil during the 2016 to 2017 school year, according to Table 236.75 in the Department of Education's Digest of Education Statistics. But only 23% of the 8th graders in the D.C. public schools were proficient or better in reading in 2019, according to the department's National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP test. Now, that is absolutely shameful. I mean, you know, you sort of get used to people who are math illiterate or computer illiterate, but illiteracy on such a scale among our young people. Are we aiming toward a world where nobody can read? They just sit and listen to what the television tells them to think? It certainly looks like that. Okay, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. The Center for Biological Diversity sued the administration for public records detailing the U.S. government's efforts on behalf of Bayer, the maker of the herbicide glyphosate, to convince Thailand last year to reverse its planned ban of the cancer-linked chemical. The lawsuit comes after documents previously obtained by the center revealed evidence that the U.S. Department of Agriculture and U.S. trade officials worked closely with the pesticide and processed food industries to pressure Thailand into scuttling its ban on glyphosate, which the World Health Organization's cancer research arm has listed as a probable carcinogen. The lawsuit, which was filed last Wednesday, seeks additional documents that administration officials have refused to release regarding their communications with representatives of Bayer and other corporations that stood to benefit from the reversal of the ban. Okay, interestingly enough, YouTube is being sued by one of their content moderators who is claimed to be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder over having to watch videos of beheadings, rape, child abuse, and other disturbing content. And she claims she's suffering depression and PTSD after being forced to watch objectionable content. Didn't even realize that stuff was on YouTube. Anyway, over at Facebook, there is a new move to redefine anti-Semitism. The objective is to force Facebook to alter its hate speech definition so that its own detection algorithm will characterize any criticism of Israel as hate speech and automatically remove the pertinent content from the platform. A good reason to not be using Facebook anymore. Israel's been screaming for years that criticism of Israel is rooted in Jew hate. That's like saying that criticizing the Nazis is rooted in German hate. The Nazis didn't do anything wrong. You just hate the German people. And you realize when it's put in that context, what a silly argument it really is. And yet Israel is getting away with this, and American corporate social media is going along with this stuff. Absolutely ridiculous here. All righty, a 25-year-old Georgia man, Benjamin Jenkins, has been sentenced to 40 years in prison, 40, after being convicted of producing and distributing child pornography. Apparently, he was contacting underage girls as young as 13 by pretending to be someone else. He would coax the girls into providing him sexually suggestive photos of themselves. Once she sent a photo, Jenkins would then threaten to post the photos online if she did not send him more photos. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And apparently there is an issue with the phone line. So if you were trying to call on in, that's the reason. And so I'm just going to keep on talking, and hopefully the phone systems are going to get reset or restarted, and we can start getting some phone calls in here. So we're talking about Donald Trump, and he took this cheap shot at Joe Biden, asking why he spent all that money on plastic surgery only to hide it behind a face mask. And of course, this came out about the same time that Biden wore his little face mask for what was a virtual presentation. And a lot of people called him on that one. Okay. Let's see. Now, a Florida high school football team flew a thin blue line flag onto the field last week. We talked about it back then. To continue honoring a student's police officer father who died off duty, school administrators banned the flag, following charges from some critics that the flag is racist. Well, then the school board reversed itself and said it was okay to take that flag onto the field. All righty. Apparently, there's this worker at the little supermarket chain in Germany, and his name is Samuel Jackson, no relation to the actor of the same name. And apparently, he was fired for saying that Asians are greasy, and said that he said it because he follows the ancient Greek philosophy of Stoicism, which says, say what's on your mind and, don't worry about hurting people's feelings. He's also suffering from autism, and says sometimes he can't form words correctly here. We already talked about the sextortionist here. Talked about that one. Former Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley is saying Trump is the strongest leader that we've got on the table. And Frehley says he likes to keep focusing on making music, and he doesn't like to talk about politics. But in a recent interview, the 69-year-old rocker made clear he's supporting Trump for re-election in 2020. Apparently, at a New York City car dealership, there was a gunman who opened fire. And apparently there was a father was trying to shield his 3 young children from the gunman, and he got shot in the thigh. Now, over in Great Britain, Meghan and Harry's brazen disregard for royal neutrality rules to dump on Trump leaves the Queen with no option but to strip them of all their royal titles. Actually, a lot of people are starting to speculate that Prince Charles, when he becomes the king, is going to be having to deal with the dissolution of the royal family. because more and more British people, while they think the royal family is traditional, they don't really think it's a legitimate part of the government any longer. So that will be difficult for him. John McCain's widow, Cindy, tears into Donald Trump as she endorses Joe Biden for president, saying, "You call one a loser, you call all the members of the military losers." Now, the problem with that is that all came out of a story in The Atlantic, and Jeffrey Goldberg has already gone public saying that the article may have been in error, that it was just, you know, they went from 4 anonymous sources, and that's basically where they got the story from. Yesterday, we were talking about these new plastic face shields that are showing up. They're being advertised on TV. They're for sale over here at our local food supermarket. And it's basically this clear plastic shield that comes up from a mount on your neck so people can see your face and you can smile and they can read your lips to help understand what you're saying. But apparently, there has been a study that shows nearly 100% of airborne droplets released by infected patients will escape through these visors. Of course, they're just going to go around the outside edge. And there's, you know, these plastic shields are not going to absorb anything. So they look good. And maybe they'll meet the requirements for wearing a face mask, but apparently they're not all that effective. More than 24 U.S. universities have already canceled spring break for 2021 amid rampant coronavirus outbreaks on campuses. We were talking about this before. Tesla's stock value plummets, well, everybody's took a shellacking today, by $50 billion as Elon Musk admits his promised cheaper batteries 3 years away, and he announced plans for a $25,000 fully autonomous vehicle. Not for at least 3 years. All righty. Billionaire Barry Diller urges Americans to save every nickel they have and warns of volatile stock markets as he calls the TikTok deal a crock. But of course, as we mentioned earlier, that deal may not be happening. Beijing has put the kibosh on that one. Apparently, a shutdown of the government has finally been averted after the House of Representatives voted to pass a stopgap funding bill after the Trump administration prevailed in their fight over funding for cash-strapped farmers. That was definitely a good thing. And Time Magazine came out with their 2020 list of the 100 most influential people in the world. The Black Lives Matter founders, Megan Rapinoe and Gabriel Union, dominated the list along with the COVID-19 heroes. All right, the attorney for Kenosha teenager Kyle Rittenhouse has released new footage showing that a Black Lives Matter protester fired a gun before his client, saying that this proves that Rittenhouse fired in self-defense. The U.S. is using The Guardian to justify jailing Assange for life. Why is the paper remaining so silent? Apparently, Israel is complaining that not enough millennials are indoctrinated with the story of the Holocaust, that too few of them, too small a percentage, know what it's all supposed to mean. And they're demanding more museums, more education, and, you know, forget about reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay. All righty. Just a second here. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm having to control. Let's see. All right, let's try that. All right, we're going to take a call on Skype from Keith Rogers, and then we're going to try and take calls on Verdo, and I'll give you that number here in just a minute. Keith Rogers, are you there?
Hang on, I need a few seconds to bring him up.
Okay. And, you know, this is live radio, and we're having technical difficulties here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put out the number for the Verto call mechanism now. It's 888-405-4974. Let me repeat that to you. Write it down. It's 888-405-4974. Do we have Keith Rogers yet?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Hi, Keith. Welcome to the show. Thank you for calling on in. What's on your mind?
I'm just laying here in bed with the dogs. Hey, I just kind of a funny. I sent you an email earlier because I'm a realist and I look at things different. But anyway, I was thinking, Mike, they just came out with that massive banking scandal again.
Yes.
Yeah, and in lieu of your comment there about reading that, I also sent you some news about from Covert Action magazine. That's interesting too. But anyway, in lieu of your comment there about Korea and moving alleged missile stuff like that, I keep thinking, this country has the ability to covertly spy on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The ability through the NSA. I mean, most of the so-called bailouts went to these big tech firms of 400,000 different subcontractors to keep Silicon Valley going, to keep the spine ring going. But anyway, they can do all that around the world and tell you, like, remember when Iraq was supposed to have these tanks out there on the border of Kuwait and everything,
Yeah.
but they have all these satellite photos and everything like that. But they can't seem to catch all the criminals in this country. Isn't that interesting?
That is very, very interesting indeed.
I mean, when you look at the money funneling back and forth to these lobbyists and like that, where its origins are, and even you yourself has commented there before about even these hackers and stuff that they should probably be put on this street there and hung up or something like that, But these hackers are never found, and yet they can tell you at a pin drop like AT&T or something like that Russia or someone else is behind some hacking like that. But they can never find anything domestically here in this country that's wrong.
Yes, you've noticed that. I think most of the hacking inside this country is connected to organized crime, and our government is still afraid of organized crime.
Well, actually, they're part of it there, and I've got a lot of documentation about that. But I'll do a summary here. I had sent you an email there. Actually, I sent it to Gator too there, but I listened to Trump's UN speech, and of course, it's denigrating to China again like that. And we know that there's probably some fault there with China, but there's a lot of links there to the Wuhan lab and everything like that tailor back to the United States and everything, But what gets me is when you look at how the U.S. is trying to pin the so-called failing of our economy on China and this virus like that, I can only think as a realist. What has the United States done to the economies of Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, all through Central and South America? I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And we're supposed to play victims. And this American exceptionalism stuff has to stop.
Yes,
I know that's
it does. I mean, we don't have the means to support it anymore, either economically or militarily. We're definitely a declining empire, and unfortunately, like many declining empires throughout history, the United States is simply lashing out at the rest of the world.
Well, yeah, and then like you had just commented there about that $1 billion to the Pentagon there, or Pentacon, I call it,
Yeah.
But again, we're in an alleged pandemic, and they're out there fortifying their contractors up like that. And remember the article from the Times of Israel that the U.S. and NATO warned Israel clear back in November of 2019 of this so-called pandemic. And then we have the United States that sent millions of dollars worth of masks and other medical equipment to China, who in turn sent them to Israel. So, I mean, I would only hope between Biden, your comment there between Biden and Trump about
Yes.
which one's better for Israelis, I wish Americans would have elected a president that would represent them instead of some foreign country.
Well, I think Americans are trying to do it, but, the Israel lobby definitely has a lock on our government. I mean, the fact that AIPAC is not required to register as a foreign agent is a dead giveaway that they basically have got the inside track.
Well, yeah, even Jimmy Dore, I don't agree with everything he says, but he's got some good valid points. But he was really tearing into Biden again, that vegetable they've got running for president. But
Hmm.
even the Australian news is calling him a corpse. I mean, that's how bad it is. I mean, but when you see the draconian things that they're implanting in our mental psyche, I watched a video of where now infants are now being fitted with these mask shields, and I mean, can you imagine as a parent? I mean, it's bad enough worried about SIDS or something like that, but now you've got to worry about this COVID with your babies and like that. It's a fear-based society. If it wasn't the Islamic extremists, when we probably should have been worried about those radical evangelicals. But if
Hmm.
it isn't them, it's the Hispanics. If it isn't the Hispanics, it's the Chinese. This constant fear-based society that we live on. I have a video there that talks about the same stuff of what it was. I mean, they even come out with frogs that eat dogs. I mean,
Yeah.
everything. These murderous hornets. I mean, we have to be afraid to step out. Of course, that's the idea. Don't step out your door.
Yes.
Stay indoors. Keep your mask on. Shut up. And as you mentioned earlier, social distancing so that you can't talk to anyone like it. And then we have the massive censorship. And that goes along with that Bill Moyer video there where he's talking to one of the guys that was an insider, I think it was for 28 or 26 years, with the federal government, who was an auditor, and where all the money went to. And this is right back to these bailouts. The bailouts went to these 400 and some odd thousand different contractors that all work as subcontractors for the NSA and CIA and these guys, which all travels right back to Silicon Valley, which is able to detect a single post, as you mentioned, like with any anti-Israel stuff like that, and immediately delete it. That's how in tune these guys are. And you can't tell me that a U.S. soldier, who I feel sorry for in many ways, is traveling 2, 3, 4, 9,000 miles away, allegedly to fight for his freedoms back home, and then look at the death toll of these guys committing suicide, realizing it's all a hoax.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it's a major
90,
major problem.
yeah, 98 airmen this year so far have committed suicide, 122 last year. 57 Marines in 2018, 22 special ops. And it's not just a loss of life, but you have to look at that as financially too, because think of what it costs to train these guys. And
Yes.
then that other report of 60,000 U.S. veterans that have killed themselves since 2008. The IG report itself of 307,000 U.S. veterans that were allowed to die, not at the hands of some enemy, but by the VA. And then that Fox News article of 274 Marines that were just dumped in the remains of theirs dumped in the Virginia landfill. Uh,
Yeah.
Kissinger's words of dumb, stupid animals comes. I mean, it just echoes through my mind about these kids are used as just pawns.
Yeah,
But anyway,
they
you were
are,
going.
and I guess when they realize it, when they realize that there really isn't a moral authority for the war, they just can't handle what it is they've been asked to do.
Yeah, and then the other one that gets me, Mike, is the Iraqi slang. I looked that up there. I forget which site it was at, but it was key words used in the Iraq War that the U.S. soldiers were referring to. And to me, it's no different than in the 70s when we were all growing up and everything like that, and listening to the spooks, the chinks, and stuff like that. All these hollowed names of racism, carried over to the sand niggers, camel, blah, blah, and what those soldiers were using and exchanging back and forth. And then hearing the soldiers themselves say, "Oh, I know this war is for Kellogg, Brown, and Root, but America needs the oil. It's American corporations." And then, it's blank, 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 them damn Iraqis. There's a video on YouTube of the world's largest cemetery. It's one of 5 in Iraq. People should
Hmm.
watch that and realize that empire has its cost. And
Yes.
sadly, since it's not Americans dying, they don't realize it. And why people would burn our flag, chant death to America. People are getting tired of this stuff.
Well, I think it's very telling that so many other nations around the world are not backing the United States unilaterally reapplying sanctions to Iran. I think America has lost its moral leadership of the world. We're not seen as a world leader anymore. I think we're seen as an out-of-control rogue nation with nuclear weapons.
Well, yeah, it's like listening to Pompeo, former CIA, where he laughs and boasts about how he lied, cheated, and stole. Well, as an American and someone that has a moral conscience, I sit there thinking, how many people died in his tenure at the CIA by his cheating and stealing? You know, I was raised to be a law-abiding citizen, pay my taxes, stuff like that. You know, and this has just got to end. And then, of course, with the U.S. withdrawing from the human rights and then threatening the international criminal courts, again, yeah, this is a rogue country. And I'm not sure how Donald Trump is going to get things back if he does get reelected there. But by God, that vegetable is just going to be a pawn there because they'll shove him right out anyway because he hasn't got the mental stability to rake a yard, you know.
Yes. Did you hear how he messed up the Pledge of Allegiance the other day?
I get so many videos of him.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, it'd be nice to be high and watch his videos, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I imagine that would be a good Toker's game here. All right, well, listen, I got to put you on hold, and we got to take a break for commercial, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and a reminder that RBN is in the middle of a fundraiser, and right now you can see why we need your help, because our telephone system got really, really depressed and was sitting over in the corner going, I can't take this anymore, and decided to commit suicide. So we're working diligently to try and get in a new phone system and get things up and running here again. Meanwhile, we're still talking to Keith Rogers on Skype. And Keith, what do you think about what's going on over in Louisville right now?
Well, you know what, Mike, I'll be honest about something. I realize a lot of things are going on in this country here, but I'll give you a plug. My show on Sunday, I will detail more of this information about this legalized murder. And what gets me is when you start realizing what's going on, and I'm going to be playing quite a few clips there from a 1970s video. On my show there, I'm sure you remember John Perkins, the economic hitman. The main deal about this show that I'll be playing is how the FBI and CIA and those, and as well as police departments, have been for decades involved in the deliberate destruction of unions. And of course, with unions comes wage disparity. And to do that, they always try to drive the fractions of races together. And you'll see how this comes out in my show if your listeners want to come into it on Sunday at 8 p.m. Montana time. But anyway, this is no different than what we see all down through Central America, South America, with the big U.S. corporations going in there. The first thing they do is they destroy unions, any wage and labor reforms. And this has been an ongoing problem. So when you look at America today and you look at the wage growth compared to what these corporations and these corporate CEOs are making, some of them have gone up some odd 1,000% compared to what it was back in the 80s. But remember, when we had strong unions, we had 40 hours a week, we had health care, we had vacation, sick leave, overtime pay, pregnancy leave for the women. That's back when women had different appendages. And all that has been taken and removed by those like George Bush, who, remember his little talk with that elderly lady who said, well, I work 3 jobs. And he says, well, that's uniquely American of you. No elderly woman should be working another job to support her pension or whatever. And this has been a deliberate destruction of this economy that just started a long time ago. And I'm going to be proven, just like these police departments now that are through this so-called racial tension, that are now doing what? Busting their unions. And this has been a ploy for a long time, is to get these unions and stuff, anything that represents the people, out. And thus, everyone has their freedom. and they can subcontract whatever they want to different firms. And I mean, we are in corporate America, and like that video I mentioned there with Bill Moyer, all those firms, 400 and some odd thousand different firms, are the ones that got the massive bailouts. And of course, many of those, which were working as shadows for the government, they're the ones that were supposed to, through these PPP loans, supposed to retain their employees and stuff. And what was nice about the government, though, is you'll notice that none of the government had to lay off any of their employees. Their gyms stayed open. And what again we're back to is it's a deliberate destruction of the middle class, all these private jobs, and all that's left is those biggers, the bigger ones like Amazon. And I mean, that's what it is. And then when you look at Microsoft and stuff, you start looking at imports. Well, what does the U.S. import from Mexico? Well, computers and stuff like that. All these jobs are still being farmed out. And so you mentioned earlier there about the educational system up here in this country here. Well, they don't need smart employees. And then look at China. I remember that article here not too long ago here about how the United States was so afraid of China, and yet it's duplicating everything China's doing. It even its medical system there, to where your doctor's visits are done through a computer.
Yes.
But China is graduating engineers and stuff, and we're graduating here students that learn about anal sex, the queering of God. And I mean, that's no way to run a country, and they just want to dumb down society.
Yeah, I think it was Andrew Carnegie said that the majority of the American people should have no more education than it took to do their jobs and fill out the paperwork. And it looks like he got his wish.
Well, it reminds me of McNamara's morons during Vietnam there, when 100,000 U.S. Boys fled to Canada. Their only retort, I guess you call it, was to draft a bunch of hill boys and stuff from Tennessee and stuff that had really low IQs and put them on a battlefield, most of which had to have their paperwork and everything like that. Some of them had to have their shoes tied. These guys were more worried about pigs and chickens and didn't know where Vietnam was,
Absolutely. Anyway, Keith, we're coming up here on another break, and thank you very much for stepping in and helping to fill some airtime here. All right, I certainly will. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to our show here, and our brilliant, overworked, and underpaid control room technician has managed to get our phone system back up and running, and we've already got callers on the line I'm going to be getting to really, really soon. The phone number is 800-313-9443. Before I take the phone calls, though, I got an email from somebody who's not really familiar with the Breonna Taylor case and wanted to know, how it all came about. Well, in brief, apparently the police were after a former boyfriend of Breonna Taylor. He was involved in some kind of nefarious activity, and he'd used Breonna's address to send and receive emails which were of concern to the police. Now, what the police did not know was that Breonna broke up with this guy, and she'd taken up this new boyfriend named Walker. And apparently what happened is the police showed up. They did knock on the door. That's been confirmed by a witness. The police are saying they announced police. Walker is saying that no, they heard the knocking, but they didn't hear police. And apparently Breonna and Walker were concerned that it was the ex-boyfriend showing up for bad purposes, which is why Walker grabbed his gun. And so when the police breached the door with their battering ram, Walker was prepared to defend himself and Breonna and shot the sergeant in the thigh, at which point the officers returned fire and Breonna was killed. That's kind of the short version. All right, we've got our phones back, so let's go to John in California. Hello, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike.
Johnny,
can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're on the air.
Okay. Last week I called in, but I couldn't get on at the end. It was talking about immigration.
Yes.
I thought of a story. I had a friend and his wife. They were from the UK years ago. They were over here. I had a green card. He had a good job. She had her own business, and they just getting the runaround trying to get in to become full time. Anyway, they finally just got fed up and went back to England. I mean, they couldn't get any help. Even the British consul wouldn't help them, and they were white, of course. But that goes to show you, there are these people who are sneaking in illegally and all that, and they won't take anybody won't take welfare, won't be a burden on the system. It's just appalling. This is ridiculous. And the one thing you mentioned about that guy who got the 40 years, good for him. And he ought to rot in there. That goes back to show you, defunding all these people and all these truth and all these alternatives. They won't touch pornography. Ridiculous. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm in agreement with the guy who got the 40 years for child pornography. As far as adult pornography, I mean, what two consenting adults want to do, I think, is their own business, as long as they're doing it in private and not scaring the horses. All right, we're going to switch over to Ken in New York. Hello, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yes, I have a comment about Bloomberg settling the debts of these released prisoners.
Yes.
And as always the case, where does the money go that gets settled? It goes back into the Treasury. Meanwhile, the taxpayers have already paid out, got nothing for it. They don't get reimbursed for it.
Well, I think it depends on the way the cases were handled by the court. In some cases, these ex-felons still owe court costs. In some cases, they owe restitution. So in the latter case, the victims of their crimes are going to get something.
Oh, so the money doesn't go back to the state then. It actually goes, the restitution is what is owed to the victim.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of both in there,
I
because
got
obviously the court fees go back to the state treasury.
I seem to remember reading the other night in New York State, I was looking at some of the laws that were coming up, and I think there's one on revenge porn, which probably speaks to what you were just talking about.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
I think that's a bad thing as well. Revenge porn, and you have to sort of wonder what kind of a mindset is involved in that kind of behavior. But sometimes when you break up with a relationship, your emotions can get the better of you. And having been through one marriage breakup myself, I can speak to that. Now, I didn't do any revenge porn or anything like that, but I remember I was less than cheerful for that period of my life here. All right, we're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Tom, welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Good day to you. Yeah, Mike, good day. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. You're on the air.
Yeah, okay, Michael. To your good day to you. To your last caller, to the caller before Johnny. Johnny, I got something to leave you on a message. It costs $110,000 or $120,000 to teach these illegals to speak English. But those people were from the UK, you said, and they already spoke English, but they still wanted to go back. He said couldn't become a resident. He couldn't even become a resident here. If you look at South Florida, Mike, there's not one white male or female on the Dade County Commission. Broward County is going to be the same way in the next probably 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
California's got 8.5 million illegals. The state is gone. The whites are fleeing out of there by the droves, in droves. They're bringing their liberal politics that they ran away when they made that state allow all these, Proposition 184. You remember that, Mike?
I remember that one.
You remember that nonsense? One black federal judge shot it down after multiple millions of white voters voted for it, and you had a black federal judge who turned it down. For what did he do for his black community, that federal judge in California? What did he do to Watts on California, this one federal black judge? We're allowing 8 million illegals in that state, Mike. Now let's get back to Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker's absolutely right, what he's saying. You heard what he's been saying, right, Mike?
Yes.
You hear what he's been saying, Herschel Walker? Herschel Walker's saying, where's the money coming from? Who are these Zionists? Who are these Zog agents that are allowing these billionaires to destroy this country, burning our cities down? Soros, Newt Gingrich, George Soros did it. Harris Faulkner, shut your mouth, Harris Faulkner. You're going to be losing your job. And your producer, you don't shut up within 60 seconds, Harris Faulkner. Because Harris wanted to keep going on about it, trust me. But, Mike, here's another thing. Have you heard about what's going on in Philadelphia and Baltimore? Have you seen the black lady run the ads in Baltimore about the trash?
Yes. I've heard of them, yes.
You know what they call? They call Philadelphia because it is filthy. Have you ever been to Philadelphia, Mike?
Yeah, I was there just about a year ago.
You remember I was there 3 years ago and there was trash everywhere. when I went to Independence Hall there. So you go about 2 blocks away from there, you think it's a dump. What's going on with that, Mike?
The whole system is
Washington,
falling
D.C.
apart.
not much better.
I
Yes.
understand that. I've seen pictures about how bad it is. In fact, I think Trump is running one of his campaign ads is focusing on the decline of the inner cities, and basically it's always Democrat-controlled cities where there's trash in the streets and homeless in the streets and used drug needles lying all over the place.
Well, hey, Mike, I got to tell you the honest truth. I've been to Cuba 5 times, and I can tell you right now, all the cities in Cuba are not a lot cleaner than here in the United States. That ain't no lie, Mike. I mean, that's a third world country, Cuba, but you know what? They don't have trash all over the place. They put they have a place, I guess, where they put all the trash or incinerate it. But here in our inner cities, I mean, some of these cities, it's a dump. It's a filthy dump. And let's talk about LeBron James, Mike. He's also helping these prisoners with Soros and Bloomberg get all these prisoners out of prison. LeBron.
Well, they're already out of prison. The problem is they still owe money, and until they pay that back, they can't be allowed to vote.
Yeah, and then he walks around like he's some kind of Superman, LeBron James. Well, like I told you, I told your show months ago, I'd rather watch a 4-foot midget dunk a 5-foot basket, and I think that'd be way more entertaining to me and to everybody. I think most of these sports leagues are actually fixed anymore. Some of these games look so rigged, I can't even see straight. They look so rigged. I won't watch them anymore. Last year when I was watching them, I was like, some of these games are really looking fixed to me. Like that movie, the X-Files, when the cigarette man was, smoking man was telling the truth. I don't know if you remember that one episode.
I remember that one episode.
But, yeah, Mike.
You remember the story of the Chicago Blackhawks, right?
Yep. Well, then he's talking about the Buffalo Bills will never win the Super Bowl. Remember that one?
I remember that one.
Yeah.
I was a big X-Files fan.
Yes, that was excellent. I used to love that show. But, Mike, another thing here is going on in Florida. Trump is up right now about 4 or 5 points now, they said, on the news today. So Trump's like he's got a little lead here. And, to your caller, some of your callers are calling. I like Dustin. I really do like when he calls in. But some of the stuff is so nonsensical, ridiculous. It's incomprehensible. But, I want to ask Dustin this. I want him to call in, and I want him to explain in New Jersey and all these states, Mike, why isn't anybody really pointing the finger that the Chinese Wuhan flu came out of China? I mean, you guys, maybe somebody defends it. That virus came out of somewhere. Maybe it did come out of the United States. I don't know. But there was some reason that the Chinese are giving the figures of how many Chinese have died. What do you think the numbers in China are, Mike, with this figure of Wuhan deaths? Whatever you want.
I'm not going to speculate at this point, but I do know that the Chinese government has been less than forthcoming about virtually every aspect of this.
Absolutely. And Mike, like I told you last week on your show, a lot of these people are wearing masks. It's making them even sicker. It's not helping them. It's making them more ill than they really can comprehend. These masks are not doing much. Trust me. They're not. Now, you were maybe in an aqua lung or something, maybe you'd be okay. I mean, like if you're in a lavatory. But you know what, Mike? This whole thing is blown out of proportion. It's even coming out of the wash. The whole thing has been a crux by Bill Gates and that crook and all these pharmaceutical companies making all these filthy money they're making, these criminals. Why does one man like Gates need all that billions of dollars for what? That crook? Why did he start giving if he's going to donate to Africa? Why did he start donating to all American people in this country that need help?
That would be very nice.
Much money. Yeah.
Or you
like
could donate to
RBN
Republic
$20 million.
Broadcasting. Hey, Bill Gates, if you're
Exactly.
listening, donate to Republic Broadcasting. We need a new telephone system.
Yeah, Mike, or any billionaire conservative for that matter. Any of these billionaires got multi-billions of dollars. They should be giving RBN $25 million. What the heck? It would be like a quarter out of their pocket. They make that in one day, most of these characters. So, Mike, I just got to say, what I'm seeing here in Florida, when I see all over, I talk to my friends all over the United States, with the BLM, the Antifa, it's all a big communist ploy. Who's kidding who? And these billionaires are behind it, like that what's that, Steyer? That crook?
Yes.
What's the billionaire guy? The guy who was running for president with Bloomberg. 2 schmucks. Bunch of schmucks. They're basically all schmucks, Mike, like Peter says in L.A. They're mostly these are all schmucks. trying to ruin this country. If they hate this country so much, why don't they move to Israel and stay in Israel? That's where they need to go. If they hate the United States so much, go to Israel and stay there.
Okay.
Right now, Trump's doing a lot. You got a lot of peace in the Middle East now, supposedly. You got Bahrain and all these other countries all coming on board. I guess Saudi Arabia's coming on board. So, maybe that will be a good thing for them. They can go over there and they'll feel secure and safe. But here in this country, they're trying to burn our cities up, man. And that's got to stop. And everybody should be arrested. You touch one monument, you should be put in jail for 10 years. You
Yes.
burn an American flag, you should get 5 years automatic. You burn an American flag as a demonstration against our country, you should do a 5-year sentence right then and there. No question asked. Hard labor. Burning an American flag. You're full of it. These BLM and all these, even white trash that is burning American flags, they can kiss it, Mike. No, I see too many. I look, my family's all military. I have 2 brothers in Vietnam, Mike. Okay? One of them passed in the VA hospital. Okay? I know what it's all about. So, to see all these imbeciles doing all this nonsense, let's send BLM and Antifa down to Cuba. Or let's send them to Haiti. It's not even communist over there. Let's put them in Haiti for 6 months and see how they like it. See if they'll go running around burning stuff. They'll be running around trying to find something to eat, a bean to eat off the street. They probably end up eating a piece of bread that's a week old. You're lucky if you get a chicken a week in Cuba, Mike. And all these fucks running around with all their filthy money they got. Burn this, burn that, tear down the country. They wouldn't pull that crap in Cuba, Mike. They sure wouldn't. They wouldn't pull that in China. They would. These BLMs and Antifa and all these NBA players. The NBA is full of crap. All that bull crap. All these sports teams are full of it. They're all political hacks. That's all they are. They're not athletes. They're political hacks. And by the way, Mike, I got to go hang up. But did you see that guy Corey Covington?
No, I didn't. What did he do? Yes.
Yeah, he won his fight. He won his fight Saturday night, and he stuck up. And he told LeBron to kiss it. That was wonderful. About time we had somebody like that. About time. We need a guy. We need more guys like him. We need millions of guys like him. Speaking up the truth. But anyway, Mike, we'll see what happens. We got the debate coming up next Tuesday, so that's gonna be really interesting. I can't wait to see it. The media's already got Biden winning.
Yeah,
they already got Biden winning, Mike. It was on the news right now. They already has Biden's going to win in a landslide against Trump in a debate. Can you believe this crap? We got to hear.
That's what they said about Hillary back in 2016.
Right. Oh, and by the way, they're really calling Herschel Walker out, calling him all kinds of filthy names because he's saying, where's this money coming from BLM? He's really calling him out. I got to admit, Herschel's really doing something. He's doing a number on him. So
yes.
Anyway, Mike, I know you got other callers. I don't know what happened to the phones today, but I'm glad I got through, and I'm glad Mike answered. So God bless, Mike. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Yeah, we're going to try and cram these last few phone calls into the end of the show. Miles in Maine, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Michael. That was another awesome call by Tom, laying down the reality. LeBron, it's no secret, he's just an ass clown. I mean, seriously, him, the NBA, the NFL, boycott them all. Walmart, Verizon, Home Depot, Lowe's, just boycott them all. Hit them where it hurts. Take their money. But, he's exactly right. And right on Kobe Covington. I mean, awesome. And Herschel Walker, you know what? That's a Hall of Famer right there. But, LeBron, instead of shooting off his mouth, I mean, he feels like he has all this power. This is what gets me, Michael. I saw a statistic that $30 billion could absolutely cure from all ends of the earth, all the hunger on this planet.
Yes.
Why doesn't this NBA and NFL with all these millionaires, you mean they don't have a couple hundred or a couple thousand that could put a $30 billion together and absolutely stop hunger? You and Claire do it all the time in your little locales.
Yeah,
these
in our
guys
little way.
Have and these guys have extensive means, but all they can do is cause trouble. Not once do I hear say, "Stop the rioting, stop this. This is child. Let's be men." I never hear them say that. And you know what? The Soros. Let me ask you this, Michael. The Soros, okay? They've got people thrown out of this country and in jails for just being people that took care of the guard dogs. or we're in control of the feeding. How is this George Soros gets to do all this? How does he get to do all this? Donate money, donate it to terrorist groups, be a dual citizen, and his past with what he did with the Nazis, but people that fed the dogs are in prison that are 96 years old. Something is terribly wrong, and it needs to be addressed. And I think Donald Trump's going to do it this second term. I at least absolutely hope so this second term, that he's going to cut loose on all these people. But this Soros donating to terrorist groups that want to kill, attack, and assault police, put in prosecutors that will let them get away with it such, and then nothing happens. So you know what? We need more of these Kobe Covingtons. We need more of these Rittenhouse young kids growing up in this world that know what it is to protect something and to be a good, decent, honest citizen and protect America. Thank you, Michael.
All right, well, thank you very much here. And we're going to skip on down to Dustin in New Jersey. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello, Dustin. Are you there? There you are.
Trump going to do it. Mike, is Trump going to donate $1 billion of his dollars, miles, to feeding world hunger? Huh?
I mean, no, he's going to build another casino.
Yeah. Mike, I hear this with Miles and wait till the second term, Mike. The indictments are coming, Mike. It's only going to be in his second and third term. It's like, come on now. I hear that. I keep hearing this. You heard what he said about Ilhan Omar, right?
Yeah.
Not AOC. Now, that was kind of over the top too, right? Like, she's not one of us. How dare she tell us how to run our country?
Mm-hmm.
See, that kind of stuff, Mike, like, I think about that first. I'm like, don't say that. Like, why would you say something like that? As like just a human being, like, I would never say anything like that. I think that was over the top also. The Joe Biden thing, I think this was more over the top than with the Joe Biden plastic surgery thing. But why does Trump say these things unless he believes them? Like, why does he do Twitter? Why does he do these things? I'm trying to get into his mind, Like, why is he saying these crazy things at this moment in time, And like, where is the bill to help the 20% unemployed still? Like, there's no bill for the Democrats, Republicans, or Trump. I hear nothing but just it's political grandstanding because there's an election coming. There's no help coming, Mike, right? Like, there's nothing coming. You saw it, and I watched Boris Johnson's speech, Mike. I don't know if you watched it because they're expecting because the cold weather's coming. They're thinking about putting the military on the streets with the police. The same with Spain. Spain's going to be putting the military out there in the districts that they're locking down.
Looks like they're expecting riots of some kind, possibly when the economy goes kaboom.
Yeah, but they're not locking down the whole country. But they're expecting more, like maybe unrest because of the virus. They don't, Mike. I think it comes down to this because we said this before. We don't know what this thing is. None of us.
No.
What does Boris Johnson know that we don't? What is he expecting in the winter? Because remember, they're a couple of weeks ahead of Spain. How much are we ahead of Britain, Mike? For the winter?
Well, not by much here, but they were predicting that the coronavirus was going to go away during the hot summer months, and it didn't. So I don't know how much faith we should put in their predictions of a second wave coming with the cold weather. Anyway, Dustin, we're almost out of time, and I got a couple more calls I got to take.
Have a good
Thank
show.
you very much. All right, I will certainly. We're going to switch over to David in Boston. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, aloha, Michael. Hey, Mike, you have a great show. I was calling in to compliment Keith Rogers. He's always been one of my favorites, and then the three callers that followed him are three of my favorite callers. What's the name of the last caller? I really liked him a lot. Who was the last caller before me?
Dustin.
Oh, Dustin, I guess. Yeah, I really like Dustin, but I really like Miles and Tom's always fantastic. But hey, if those politicians, Mike, in Washington, D.C., you know, in the swamp, the district of criminals, you know, if the average politician in Washington had the character and the humanitarianism of Keith Rogers, the whole world wouldn't hate us. Keith Rogers is just to me, he exemplifies true American values and true American altruism and humanitarianism. And, you know, why can't the people in Washington, why do they have to be so mean and cruel? Why can't they emulate Keith Rogers more? Like, you know?
Well, because they wouldn't get elected then.
I guess so. Follow the
You know, I'm
money
not
and
saying
everything,
anything
but
against Keith Rogers. He's too good to run for office.
Oh yeah, he's too good. Absolutely, Mike. Mike, is Keith from up around the Tri-City area of Montana, Whitefish and Kalispell, and up that way?
I have no idea. I have no idea
So
what part of Montana he's from.
Oh, okay. I think he is. I spent quite a bit of time up in the Northern Rockies and everything, hiking and camping before I finally wound up in Alaska. But there was a really neat Catholic priest as far as Catholic priests go. His name was Father John Karapi. And I wonder if Keith knows him, but he was from up around the Tri-City
Well, Montana's
area.
kind of a big state here. David, listen, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to try and jam one final call into today's show, and that's Joe in Tennessee. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, you know, Trump was talking about a week ago. I meant to call you about it, but for some reason I didn't. And he was talking about these super weapons that they have. And I mean, Joe Scarborough was all bent out of shape about it, saying he's releasing secret information. Well, he's the president; he can do that.
Yes.
But anyway, I think you know, I've been saying all along that, you know, the weapons we see, like that we know about, are probably 20, 30 years behind what they really have up their sleeve. And I think it's a good thing for Trump to let the Chinese and the Iranians and any other people that might be thinking about stirring up trouble, even though we stir up trouble too, know
well,
that
you also have to
have
look at the possibility that Trump may be bluffing to try and keep China and Russia in line during this period of confrontation. Anyway, Joe, I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's the music. It's time to end our show today. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure that he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please, 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 please donate. We need a new telephone system. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.